started. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chase Buckler. I am the Director of Talent Development for the Tuscarawas County Economic Development Corporation. And I want to say thank you all for coming to our inaugural Workforce Summit for Tuscarawas County. I want to take a moment here to thank our sponsors for today. First off, I want to say a special thank you to Team NEO, which is the Northeast region for the JobsOhio. They were a monetary sponsor for today, and we're very grateful for that. And likewise, we want to say thank you to the Stout Tuscarawas Workforce Development Board. They were also a monetary sponsor for today. Also a special shout out to my organization, the County Economic Development Corporation. And lastly, I want to say thank you to all our partners with the Training and Education Alliance for Manufacturing Tuscarawas, also known as Team Tuscarawas. We're going to go over a quick agenda for this morning before we roll into the speakers. I'm going to start with bringing a QR code up here. That's why I asked you to sign into the Wi-Fi. That way you guys can sign in. For those of you that don't know, we are offering SHRM credits as well as CEUs for educators today. So this QR code is how we're going to get those to you. So it's going to ask for your email address, your first and last name, and then a yes/no for if you want either of those credits applied to you. And then I'm going to show you a couple of videos. We've been working hard on a video campaign that we're calling Manufacturing Tuscarawas, and today is going to be the soft launch of that campaign, and we're going to show you two of the videos. And then we'll head right into our speakers. Our first speaker is going to be Dakota Pawlicki from Civic Lab. He's going to kind of talk about a nationwide approach to systems and data workforce. And then we're going to go on to Molly Moses from Team NEO. She's going to kind of give you that state-level approach to building out the talent pipeline, especially when it comes to technicians and apprenticeships, those kind of things. And then we're going to come down a little bit more local to the Stout Tuscarawas Workforce Development Board, and they're going to talk to you about some local resources that are available. And lastly, we're going to bring up a panel of a few of our businesses that are success stories in our community. All right. I'll give you a few moments to sign up. As we're finishing that up, I'm going to give you a little bit more time here. Next, we're going to roll into the videos, but I also, one more person I want to say thank you to, and that is Kent State University for hosting us today, and a special thanks to Jonathan and Julia, our sound and video team in the back. Alright, so I'm very excited about this part of today's presentation. We've been hard at work on this video campaign, and we're finally getting to share them with the community. This campaign consists of 10 videos, 5 of which are about battling misinformation about the industry of manufacturing or what it's like to work, the life of manufacturing. And that's what this first video I'm going to show you is. And then the second 5 tell individual stories of people within our community, their career journey and how they got to where they are now, to give some outreach and awareness on what's available within the community. We're going to go ahead and start with the first one, which is about work-life balance in manufacturing.
My work-life balance allows me to be involved in my kids' life and come home every night. In manufacturing, I love that you have a set schedule, so you know when you need to be in there and when you get off work, so you can plan your life around that.
I absolutely believe that having a job that gives you a great work-life balance, the absolute best thing you could ever have. I believe it gives you more drive at work, it makes you go after more, it even gives you more energy level to go out and talk to the people out on the floor. Then when you go home, it's like you're refreshed. There's all these things that they want to do, and I feel like my battery's still there, like I still have some left.
If I was at work and then I get off, I don't think it's going to affect my ability to go home and play the guitar, because I know that Saturday and Sunday is good. If I want to play it, I can play it on those days.
If I had tickets to something or an experience I wanted to do, I have time to do it. If I have weekends off, usually going to experience something, whether it be music or some type of carnival place like a fair in the area.
I don't miss soccer games. I don't miss events with the kids. I'm not working on the weekends. You're able to be a family person while you're working in manufacturing, because there's no demand for me to be there on the weekends or a busy holiday. I'm not working those days. In manufacturing, that's a huge perk. That at the end of the day, you can shut it off. You close that laptop and you can go home.
All right, so our second video of today is going to tell the story of a young manufacturing engineer that works at Great Hall. She's actually going to be on our panel at the end of today's presentation. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a read ahead on her story.
Everything you need to succeed is right here in Tuscarawas County, and I am grateful to it. My name is Varian. I am a manufacturing engineer at Great Hall Industries. I love engineering because every day I get to help people do their job better or be safer to go home to their families. I started in engineering due to manufacturing camp and Project Lead the Way. Manufacturing camp was really immersive into the manufacturing culture around this area. I originally started into Project Lead the Way when I was in middle school. It was definitely a defining factor into me entering into engineering. My father is the teacher of the class. I started taking the class, and my father was a very big impact on getting me into engineering, just through growing up with him, always tinkering on stuff.
Oh, I'm very proud. I mean, she was very artsy, so my wife and I encouraged that in her, always in the garage with me, with my teaching. I call it the shotgun blast, where I try to expose them to as much stuff as I can. And you do to foster that creativity and that wanting desire to do something.
Kent was very good at setting you up for success by introducing you into local industry. And then you have Pawlicki who was just as very good at getting you connections and showing you different industries that might fit you best.
She was in one of my classes and she came to me and said, "Can you get me into Great Hall?" And I always tell them the same thing. I know a guy. They hired her, and then I got the reports back that they loved her and she loved her job, and it just worked out really well.
Tuscarawas County is probably one of the best places to get into engineering and manufacturing. I mean, there's just so many jobs. You don't even just have to be an engineer. You can be someone in sales and business, or a welder or a machinist. I mean, there's so many opportunities offered in this county. You have almost every industry you can get into.
All right, I just want to take a second to thank all of our partners that helped create these videos. We are very excited for the launch. We're going to be pushing them out all over social medias, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all of those. So just keep an eye out for them as we release them in the coming months. All right, I'm going to go ahead and welcome our keynote speaker to the floor, Dakota Pawlicki from Civic Lab.
It's funny, I was hanging out with Paul yesterday, just giving me a little tour of the campus, and I'm pretty sure he told me he knew a guy like 5 times. I was like, how do I know the guy you know, Paul? I'm not going to give him that list. Very grateful for you all this morning, and I'm just going to get my timer going here, lest you stick with me forever. I told Chase I can be a little long-winded at times, but I promise I won't be that long-winded. Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you today. And I'm really grateful that you all came out on this Friday morning. It says something a lot about you. At Civic Lab, we're a nonprofit institute that helps communities and partnerships come together to solve complex social challenges. And we've had this really great honor of working with you all and a lot of your teams over the past couple of years to try to help improve the kind of workforce things that you're trying to do in a variety of challenges. And really today, what I want to do is talk a little bit about some of the shifts that we know communities and regions need to take in order to be successful. You know, there's a lot of challenges we have in the world, certainly things like workforce development, you know, educational success. You know, these things actually are growing more and more complicated by the day. And so it's part of our role is to help communities just like yours figure out what are some new ways we can come together. I am a bit of a wanderer, so just take this real quick. All right. Thanks. And so really, I'm going to start in kind of maybe a strange place. I've been looking at research around trust and around faith in our institutions probably for the last 15 years. I've been trying to keep a good track on it. You know, Gallup has done some really good reporting, some other things, but there's a new report that just came out. It's the 2026 Edelman Trust Barometer. It's a worldwide assessment, essentially, around trust and the degree to which folks have trust in various things. I encourage you all to take a look at it if this is interesting to you. One of the things that they have found is that worldwide, 7 out of 10 people now are leading a much more insular life. That's a worldwide figure. It's kind of terrifying. The idea, what they mean by insular, is that their likelihood of trusting someone who is from a different cultural background, racial background, someone who has different values, someone who maybe listens to different news sources or has access to different facts, they just don't trust them at all anymore. 7 out of 10 people. And that should be kind of a cause for concern. You know, and certainly, you know, they go on, they ask a number of things, including, you know, what's your, how likely is it that the person in the next generation is going to be better off than you? Worldwide, that number is now only 32%. Only 32% of people in the world think that the next generation is going to be better off than them. That's kind of a terrifying thought. And if you're trying to find where the U.S. is at on this, we're right here in this middle. In America, it's only 21%. You know, it's roughly 1 out of every 5 people actually think that their kids are going to do better than themselves, which is disappointing. And we've had kind of a 9 percentage point decrease in between the last 2 years. Now, this is important for a lot of other reasons too, because it's, well, where is trust actually happening, and where is trust being located? You know, on the left-hand side here, and I know this is small, you know, there's a lot less trust now in national government leaders. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Anyone shocked by that news? It just feels all very, very divisive. You know, a lot of challenges everywhere. But remember, this is also kind of global, so this is not just the U.S. here in this number as well. Certainly things like news organizations and notably other CEOs. CEOs as a general abstract idea are getting less and less trust. We have fewer people relying on them. But the good news is actually on the other side. We're seeing an increase of trust when it's in our own community. We have more trust among our neighbors, among our friends, among our family. And notably, we have more trust among our workers and my own CEO. And what the whole Edelman report kind of goes on, it's really good, it's very digestible too. One of their key summaries is that actually people have more trust in their own workplace than ever before. You have more trust in your CEO to do something that's right for you. And same thing is true with our neighbors. And oh, by the way, since I know we do have some teachers in the room as well, don't worry, teachers. It's still, despite all these declines, people are still trusting scientists and teachers. So way to go, teachers. Keep it up. I used to be a music teacher, so it's all a little soft spot in my heart. The point really here, though, is that, I pressed the wrong button. Let's try this again. The point really here is that, you know, when we look at this, what this is telling me at least, is that trust is coming back local. Our faith in institutions is actually much more local. We are all putting our trust in the places, in the people that can actually make change in our lives. That's you all. I don't know if you know this, but not everyone shows up for a Friday morning workforce summit. I hate to tell you, a lot of times I go to communities and they're like, who's going to help us change? It's like, I'm sorry to tell you, it's you. You're here. You opted into being here today. People in this county are putting their trust in you because you're here today and choosing to make this opportunity come real for them. You have the opportunity to actually help improve people's lives and address the things that they want to address. The kind of era of this notion that big government or these large corporate acts is a little bit gone. I hate to sound like such a pessimist so early in the morning, but I think that we are realizing more and more, and we've been tracking this data for a long time, that trust has been coming local now for a very long time. And so that gives us an area of opportunity as well. I'm not allowed to call sometimes where they just say, gosh, the problem is with all this trust and faith stuff, we have to change the narrative. We have to change the narrative that, college is, for everybody, or that everyone needs post-secondary education. We need to change the narrative that you can trust in big government. I just realized as I was putting this together as well, I used to be on a call with a bunch of journalists who were talking about changing the narrative around trust, and then I just realized I haven't been invited to that call in a while. I think they kicked me off. And this is why, because I'm so tired of hearing this. I'm so tired of hearing that, we just have to change the narrative concept. Because you can't just communicate out to people and convince them that, oh, no, it's fine, you should just trust us anyway. There's no amount of, social media trickery that we can do to really change people's minds. And instead, I argue that really, in order for us to shift the narrative, our narrative will shift when we shift our collective attention. Our narrative will shift when we actually do something to help people, actually take action, and actually demonstrate a real difference in our community. That is going to be the way you shift the narrative. And we see this across the country. Civic Lab has a real honor of working with hundreds of communities, much like yours, around the country. And we notice that that is the big difference, is that when a community starts to shift their collective attention, they work together in new ways and say, okay, what are some of the things that we can really do despite all these other headwinds? That is really the thing that starts making communities much more prosperous. And so what I want to talk through today is just a couple of these shifts. I have 4 shifts for us today that we'll walk through. And along this way, we're asking ourselves, what do we want to shift? How do we shift our collective attention as a community? How do we shift the collective attention that brings together our employers, our education institutions, our community assets, our elected officials, right here to really maximize on that opportunity we have since people trust us. So the first shift I'm going to talk about is a shift in process. I started my career as a music teacher in Chicago, and then eventually I was brought up to the district level. I joined the evil ranks of central office people, which everyone hates central office people, by the way. At least in Chicago, they definitely did. I had friends stop talking to me. It was kind of fun. And I had 2 jobs. I was our director of college access, but I was also our executive director of strategic partnerships and projects. And you guys have other titles before? Yeah, I was like the catch-all. If it didn't fit neatly in the district, it came to me. I was running high school fairs, and then the next minute I was doing recess facilitation contracts. I remember one night I had pulled an all-nighter. I'm a tuba player, folks. I went to college to play tuba, period. And then all of a sudden here I am writing 30 contracts for the school district, and I'm like, shouldn't there be a lawyer doing this? So my point is that I had a lot of stuff that I was supposed to collaborate with people on, but no one really ever told me how to collaborate. We don't really tell people how to collaborate or what to do. And so as I go and I talk to communities much like yours, one of my favorite questions to start with is this: does your community have an intentional, well-designed, explicit process for how you work together? Think for a moment about a time that maybe you were invited to be part of a grant. Hey, we have a grant application coming up, or we have this shared asset in the community. Marla and I were chatting very, very briefly about land use. Hey, there's this plot of land. You all come together. Did that work well? Can you think of an example of a time where a collaboration worked really well, and perhaps a collaboration didn't work so well? And have you taken some time to really consider that? One of the things that we think, that we're fairly certain on, is that a lot of folks kind of end up here in this little box, right? We come together, we say, hey, we have this challenge, we have this opportunity, let's work together. And what ends up happening in this box is that, it's kind of everything's left to chance. Sometimes the group gets together and, it kind of, the loudest person in the room ends up getting what they want. The most emotional person gets in there what they want. I was part of a collaborative group recently, and this person was really weaponizing all of their emotions and making everyone else so uncomfortable in the room that they just kind of got their way. It's clearly a tactic they learned over the course of time. So on and so forth, right? There's all these implicit things that end up happening. The thing is that when we leave our process for collaboration to chance, we're also leaving the outcomes to chance. And we also can't really replicate or learn from that. So instead, the shift of process is to say, collaboration is an actual process. When we want to bring together the public, the private, the social sectors, we have to follow some kind of methodical process in order for us to be successful. Civic Lab has a process called the stakeholder engagement process that we teach, that we help people kind of think through and say, hey, does this process work for you? Might this be an opportunity to say, what is your unique way? And the goal is not for you to take someone else's process and go and find it and adopt it. The goal is for you to find your own unique way. What's the Tuscarawas way? How do we collaborate right here in our own community? There is a community that's done this really, really well, and I'm going to bring you to where Civic Lab was started about 15 years ago in Columbus, Indiana. It's not far from here, about 4.5 hours or so. Come on over anytime. We'll roll out the red carpet for you. It'll be a great time. It's a community of about 50,000 people in a county of 80,000. Columbus is a real interesting place. Again, before I moved to Indiana, I had no idea about Columbus. I'd never really heard of it before. But for the last 20 years or so, Columbus has been actually outproducing the country in terms of post-secondary attainment. We're leading out of every other metropolitan statistical area. We have the highest number annually of college graduates coming out of Columbus. Even when other challenges came up to Columbus, like food insecurity, there are a lot of people in the community that didn't have access to the food they needed to survive and to support their families. So the community got together. We got the public, the private, the social sector together and said, hey, how do we make sure we can redesign this transit system and redesign the food banks and the meal sites and things like that to make sure people have food access? And then at one point in time, we were focusing on trying to increase college access, and we started going out to our school counselors, and we said, hey, how do we help you become better school post-secondary advisors? And they said, we don't even have time to do that right now because so many of our students are having mental health crises. And so much of our time as a school counselor right now is spent dealing with and helping students and families who are having acute mental health challenges. We have no one to refer them to. We also noticed that suicide ideation, particularly among young women, was particularly high. About 25% of our 8th grade girls were saying that they had thoughts of suicide. And so once again, our community came together. It wasn't just a school district problem. We didn't look at that and just say, well, schools do better, good luck, here's a grant, right? No, we got the business community involved and the philanthropic community involved, the public and the private and the social sector, and said, how do we change this? And by working together, we ended up changing a lot of different things within this particular body of work, including reducing suicide ideation in a 2-year period down to 18%. This work continues on as a referendum. So it's an interesting place. Columbus is a place that has figured out how to work together in a really, really effective way. And we ask ourselves, well, how are they doing all this? I always thought, why didn't I hear about you? But we have to ask the question, how is this actually happening? And in order to tell you that story, I'm going to go back a little bit in time, but I promise I'm not going to linger here for long. But let me bring you back briefly to 1950. In 1950, Columbus, Indiana looked very much like what I imagine a lot of Ohio towns looked like. It was this nice little slice of Americana, the Midwest imagery of America at the time. It was the center of commerce and culture. People from around the counties, the collar counties, would come into Columbus to do their shopping, to go to plays, to do their banking, what have you. But pretty much every way you looked at it, it was mostly an agrarian kind of community and largely blue collar. But there was another word that would often be used to describe Columbus at this time. Then it was a very average community. Now don't get me wrong, a lot of us aspire to be good old average Americans. That's a good thing. And what's wrong with being an average community? And certainly when we start to look at the data at the time, going back to 1950, if we were to compare Columbus to their 8 city peer comparisons, you'll see that on all the metrics that we care about, our population growth, our median income, you name it, our unemployment rate, was pretty much right in there with our 8 city peer comparisons. But if we look at the same data and cast out 60 years from them, you can see Columbus made a turn somewhere. Something happened. While over the 60-year period, our other 8 city peers, grew their population by 4%, we grew 104%. Our labor force growth grew 190% compared to 17%. Average weekly wages, $840 compared to $626. What happened in Columbus over the course of 60 years? Well, part of the story we like to tell is through the eyes of this man. This is young J. Irwin Miller. The Miller family was a wealthy family in Columbus. They were financiers. They had some businesses in the wholesale district. They were good, honest Methodists. They sent J. Irwin off to college. And he does the most crazy thing you can think of if you're a family of financiers. He studies the liberal arts. He goes, he learns how to speak German and, all these other languages so he can read the Bible in original text. He studies design, architecture, he does all this. So he graduates from college. He's out there growing, stocking stocking grocery shelves for a while, and the family's like, what do we do with this guy? What do we do with Jay Irwin? So they bring him back home because there is happened to be their driver had started a business in their garage. And that business was trying to figure out how they can take this new technology called the diesel engine and bring it to the marketplace. And so they said, this company hasn't made money for 17 years. Why don't we put Jay Irwin? You're going to be the chairman of this company. And listen, hey, if it turns a profit, great job. You get some learning experience. If it doesn't, no big deal. We'll divest and just move on. And so, he comes home. Well, that company would end up becoming Cummins Engines, a global powerhouse of engines who employs more people worldwide than Columbus has people in their town. And Columbus is still the headquarters for Cummins as well. And J.R. Miller was the guy who really took it to the modern day success that Cummins is. But before all that, right, we're going back to 1950, before Cummins was really huge, before there was like a ton of money, he was just a business owner in this community at this point. They realized they had a problem. It was called the baby boom. Now, depending on how you feel about this, the baby boom is either the most catalytic or catastrophic thing to happen to a community. And they did the math in Columbus, and they said, we're going to have to build a brand new school every 2 years for the next 18 years for us to keep up with demand. And that terrified them because they had just built a new school and it was really, really bad. I mean, NPR just recently did a story about this. The walls were falling apart like the first day of class. These were prefab buildings, instruction was bad. So the community is looking at themselves like, gosh, we have to build a lot more schools and we're not very good at doing this. So what does J.R. Miller do? Well, he's a fan of architecture and design, so he goes to the community and he makes something that we affectionately refer to as the offer. And he says, I've taken this piece of paper here and I've written down 5 of the world's best architects. What I want you to do is I will pay for their design fees, I will pay for their travel. Since it's a school, it's still publicly funded construction, but in order for me to pay for this architect to actually design this building, you, the community, have to do 2 things. One, you have to come together to interview these architects and collectively decide who is going to build the building. And notice that he wasn't just going to the school board. He asked for the whole community to come together to decide. And then once you've decided, the second condition is you have to work with that architect to actually build that school. And so the community, desperate to build new schools, like, sure, whatever, that sounds fine, weird, but let's try it out. And in 1954, they built a Lillian C. Schmidt Elementary School. Notice it's not the J. Irwin Elementary School or anything like that. Now I'm skipping over a really big part of the story here because eventually Columbus would keep this program going on. It became accessible to all publicly funded buildings, and in Columbus there are over 80 architecturally significant mid-century modern buildings now. We have an Art Deco fire station, the fire station, the library, the city hall, all of this. The corporate community got involved and also started hiring those same architects to build their places of business. Churches got involved. What happened was that Mr. Miller wasn't focused on building buildings. He was actually focused on getting the community to work together. This is exactly what he wanted. He wasn't here to build schools. He was saying, we have a challenge, and we know that we have to come together as a community to figure out how to meet this challenge together. We can't just rely on one sector alone to really support our entire community. So he got this community to work together in these new ways. And he was really proud of that. And what they ended up building over that course of time was a 75-year living laboratory for cross-sector collaboration. And this is one of the reasons that Civic Lab was actually created, because Mr. Miller really thought very deeply about this. And one of the things that was an anchor in our community is this idea that mastering the ability to work for and with each other is the cement of our society. He knew that from a manufacturing perspective. As a manufacturer, he knew that mastering my ability to work with the person on either end of my production chain is going to be key to my business. But he wasn't talking about manufacturing, he was talking about communities. And he knew that if we can get as a community, master our ability, really master our ability to work together across sectors and as neighbors and as people and as leaders, that is going to be the cement of our society. And we've seen that come out in the numbers in Columbus. The Columbus story is there for that particular reason. But they always just referred to it as the Columbus way. They never took a time to wrote it down. And so it's kind of funny because every time there'd be a new challenge, even still to this day, people are like, oh, we'll just use the Columbus way to get there. They just called it the Columbus way. So that's the reason Civic Lab was originally created. We were created about 15 years ago because, well, over the course of 75 years, people leave the community, people retire, people start to pass away, and we knew that this thing, this Columbus way that helped us do so much was about to disappear. No one had ever written it down. So Civic Lab was originally created to document the Columbus way. Our stakeholder engagement process wasn't something that was created on a whiteboard after looking at a bunch of research and frameworks. This is literally how Columbus operates. And so our goal is to help other communities say, well, what is your way? What's the Tuscarawas way? You can rob and duplicate ours. We call it R&D, rob and duplicate. So you're welcome to steal as much of it as you want. Just let, slap your own colors on it and call it a day. That's fine. We don't care. But also you might try some things and say, hey, what is our unique way of coming together? How do we uniquely want to use a process? Because as Edward Deming would say, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. By the way, quick aside, this is one of my favorite things. A lot of times there's this, oh, education and business can't talk to one another. Both of you speak process. Both of you speak process really, really well. So if next time you're in a collaborative setting, you're trying to work, connect those two dots, just remember that if you start talking about what you're doing as a process, it really goes pretty far. So, let's just say for a minute that you're like, cool, I'm with you, Dakota, we need to have a process. And again, I invite you to just, take a moment at some point in time today and just think, as a collaborative here, as a collaboration or a partnership that you've done that maybe you're part of, are you following an actual process? Could you document it down? And if the answer is no, take a moment if you're in the middle of some partnership work and start to document your process. Just say, what do we do? How do we do it? Who is at the table? What do we do? What are the steps we took? That is going to be the thing to help you really create your process. The communities that make the most difference in our country right now are those that have a process and those that know they have a process. Because once you do, you can continue to improve it over and over and over again. The second big shift that I want to talk about is the shift in approach. And this is a really fun one, I think. A lot of us are very, very proud problem solvers, right? I know you're currently here with me, you're not at work, but probably right now your emails are being, full of people who need problems being solved, and you're going to go back to the office today and like, oh, it's Friday, maybe I'll duck out a little bit early, but then inevitably something will happen, you have to solve someone's problem. We're all very proud problem solvers, and we should be. Because what happens is that most of us are wired in this kind of programmatic model of thinking. So what happens is that we see a problem, someone comes to us with a problem, says, hey, I have this thing, or become aware of a problem, what do? We go into our organizations, and we say, well, what are the resources I have? How can I allocate some time and attention, some resources, maybe some technology, some money. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to share this information and figure out something and help you solve your particular problem. And what we pop out with is a brand new program. And then eventually what happens is that you look around and you say, gosh, we're so busy running all these programs, and we start having conversations around like, how do we not duplicate efforts? Or we don't have time to collaborate, we have so much going on, we have initiative fatigue. Or a lot of times you'll call up a guy like me and be like, we have all these great programs, we don't know what's working. And everyone's so busy like writing grant reports and filling out dashboards and updating KPIs and emailing and meeting after meeting after meeting, that you kind of forget that all you're really doing is just running a series of programs. Now don't get me wrong, programs are important. We do need programs to help people solve problems. But the challenge is that too few of us are actually spending our time thinking about the system. Thinking about how do all these things actually work together. And so one of the things, a big shift that we want to see and help communities make is more towards a systemic model of thinking. And when we start thinking more like systems designers, what we're actually asking ourselves is how can we dissolve a problem altogether? Right? How do you take a problem that you find yourself solving every single day, over and over and over again, and redesign the underlying system that's holding that problem in place so you never have to solve it again? This is a really fun thing to start doing. Like when you go home and you look at the stuff and you're like, gosh, I've been solving this same problem now for weeks, for months, for years. Ask yourself, is there a way for me to redesign so I never have to solve this problem ever again? What you're actually doing in this process is that your goal then shifts. Your goal shifts to not solving a problem, but actually saying, how do I make sure so no one has this problem ever again? In order to do that, we have to work across a lot of organizations a lot of times, or even in large organizations across departments. We also have to then redesign kind of what's actually happening by sharing different information. The result is not a new program, it is actually a fundamental redesign of how the work operates. Again, manufacturing knows this really well, right? The whole Toyota way, total quality improvement, that's what this all is. But we don't really apply it for the social sector for some reason. In our social sector world, when it comes to humans, we're totally fine with just solving the same problem over and over again. And I guess that's one of the reasons we all keep so busy. So how do we actually get to this right side of this puzzle? How do we get more into the more systemic model? The principle here is that it's a systems thing, not a single thing. This, if I'm successful today, this is like the t-shirt slogan, or every once in a while I'm like, hey, who wants to go get a tattoo with this? But then I'm too nervous to get a tattoo, so I don't want anyone to actually take me up on that offer. There was once that someone offered and I got terrified, so I ran out of there. The idea here is this, is that you're all very smart, capable people. If there was a single thing that you could do to solve the challenges that you're trying to address, you would have done it. If there was a program that you could have run that solved all your workforce challenges, you would have done it. If there was a bucket of money that you could throw at something that would have solved the problems, you would have done it. If there was a policy change that would have changed everything, you would have done it. I know you would have done it. We all would have done it. There's not one single thing that can help us. So we have to think more about the system. We have to say it's a systems thing, not a single thing. We have to move away just from doing individualized programs, saying how do we actually make these things all work together in new and reconfigured ways. I think a really good example of this is from Rockford, Illinois. Has anyone been up to Rockford before? Yeah? Okay, cool. I kind of grew up around this region, about an hour and a half outside of Chicago, depending on how you drive, half an hour just south of Madison, Wisconsin. An interesting place for a lot of things. They have a wonderful Japanese garden, if you're ever over there, by the way. And this is Mayor Larry Morrissey. Mayor Morrissey, when he was being elected, ran on the position that he was going to really curb homelessness. Homelessness was a pretty big problem in Rockford at the time, and he said, hey, we're going to really tackle this. So he goes through his first term, he does some stuff, and nothing changes. But he gets reelected. Cool. So he's like, hey, okay, we learned a whole bunch of stuff this last time, let's tackle it now. Once again, Mayor Morrissey goes and he tests all these different programs and gives out a bunch of grants and hires these police officers and does all these things, and his second term comes to an end, and guess what? Nothing about homelessness actually changed. So he decides, he's like, hey, I'm not doing this again. He gets reelected to a third term. Apparently people are not electing him on his track record for homelessness. He gets elected for a third term, and he gets a phone call and says, hey, we want you to join this cohort of mayors from around the country that are working on a really dynamic problem, like, would you want to do it? And of course he's going to say yes, because that's what you do as a mayor. Guess what the challenge was? Homelessness. So I'm sure he goes home, has a stiff drink, gets himself geared up, and says, fine, let's do it again. What they did immediately, though, is they knew they had to shift their approach. He knew that what he was doing before, this kind of bevy of programs all around, wasn't working. So how does he actually shift what they do? And he kind of talks about it as saying, like, we really had this codependency in our community. There's so much blame, there's so much finger pointing. Homelessness was an example of this. We were addicted to mediocrity. We were completely fine with having mediocre results, so long as it was kind of out of place, out of mind, and it didn't bother people too much. We were okay with it. So what did they do to actually make this shift in approach from moving away from just a series of programs? The very first thing is they upped the ante. They didn't say we want fewer homeless people. They didn't say we want unhoused people to be well-fed. They said we want to end homelessness, period. How do we end homelessness in our community? So the very first thing is they up the ante, they up their vision, completely change it. Second is they said, okay, we've been trying to boil the ocean for way too long. What if we started with a target population? And they started with veterans. There was about 80 or so unhoused veterans in Rockford. So they knew, wait a minute, if we can't get 80 veterans into housing, then we have no business being in the jobs we have. Veterans also were a great place to start because there's a lot of already public dollars allocated, both from the VA and from housing, and also politically very safe. No one's going to be mad at you for trying to house veterans. It's a great thing to start with. So they said, okay, we're going to stop boiling the ocean. We're going to start by saying, how do we get our unhoused veterans who live here in Rockford actually housed? In order to do that, they had to make a couple of other shifts in their approach. Do you know how we count homelessness in this country? It's a point-in-time count, a pit count, right? So we go out one night a year, some places do it twice a year, and we go and we count how many people are unhoused, and we get a statistical sample that's relevant, and then we add some statistical jujitsu, and voila, our homelessness comes out. And then we wait until next year, we do all these things, and we wait until next year to measure it again, right? You cannot solve a dynamic problem using static data. It is going to be impossible for you to actually change homelessness if you only count it once a year. And they knew that, so they moved to a by-name list. And so now it worked as like, hey, Dakota checked into the ER, he said he was unhoused, let's get him on the list. And then every week, this integrated command team would meet and go through that list. Hey, is Dakota in housing? Where is the how do we move that? Great. What about Jack? What about Amber? What about Veronica? So they made this by name list, and it helped them make another really important shift, which I'm just going to mention briefly here. Is it helped us move away from how we think the system works to actually how it works. Even folks like us who are deep inside of these systems that we're working on, whether it's education or workforce, we really only understand it through our own perspectives. So doing this kind of by name list helped them understand what it really meant to be unhoused in Rockford, and how do we actually make this kind of shift happen. And so they started solving for one. They took one person at a time and got them housed. And along the way, as we were doing this, helping Dakota get into a housing program or get into permanent housing, they were learning all these barriers along the way. You know, sometimes they're mundane barriers. There's too many forms to fill out. This group didn't talk to that group or something like that. Sometimes there are larger barriers that we have to get figured out. But slowly but surely, they would solve for one case at a time. But along that way, they were documenting the ways that they were solving the problem so they could flip this coin. And the other side of this coin is this extend to many. They said, okay, we've solved it now for a bunch of people, for one of these instances. What have we learned? And how do we take that learning to redesign how our system is actually working so we never have to solve that problem again? And again, sometimes these are very mundane things. That counseling example I told you around suicide ideation, one of the challenges our counselors had, they had to fill out one of 37 referral forms. If you're sitting there with a student who's having an acute mental health crisis, now as a counselor I have to go figure out which 37 forms I need to go fill out. You know how much time that took? We got it down to 2 forms. Right? That was a mundane thing, but we redesigned the system to make it a little bit easier. Right? There were times where Rockford was doing the same kind of things, but along the way, they redesigned the system. The idea here is the approach is saying, solve for one, extend to many. All these programs you have running out there, are you documenting the kind of challenges that you're solving, how you solve them? And then do you have a place to go? Do you have a partnership that says, yeah, we'll actually go and figure out a way to make sure you never have to solve this problem again? The shift in approach is solve for one, extend to many is one of the most powerful and effective ways to change systems because it's so tangible. It's not idyllic. It's not let's go make a big plan page and redesign our system. Let's go see how it works. You're taking real examples from people and saying, hey, let's really figure out how we can redesign this particular system. Eventually, the Tableau Foundation will get involved and help them calculate it. Again, since it's a dynamic problem, not a static problem, you can't necessarily set a static goal to end homelessness because it's a dynamic thing. Regrettably, in our country, there will always be people who are falling into homelessness. So they decided to say, our goal is not some percentage reduction, but is actually to get functional zero. How do we make it that no one is homeless in Rockford for longer than 24 hours? And they calculated it, and they said in 10 months we can reach functional zero. In 10 months' time if we continue at this pace, and of course they would do that. Rockford's not alone. There are many communities that have taken this approach. It's kind of hosted by an organization called Built for Zero. But no one in Rockford is homeless for longer than 24 hours. And Dan Heath writes about this in his book Upstream. It's a great book. One of the things that Dan Heath says and calls out is that it's amazing what didn't change in the macro conditions. There wasn't some big new housing project that was built. There wasn't some big federal grant that came in. There wasn't even state policy change. They took what they had in their community, built what they needed, followed a methodical process, shifted their approach, elevated their expectations of each other, and really just said, this is what we're going to do. Kept at it. And so now in Rockford, no one is homeless for longer than 24 hours, starting with those veterans, and moved on to other target populations as well. So we have to ask ourselves, what is our approach? As you've been thinking about the challenges that you've come here to talk about and think through, have you been taking a very programmatic challenge? Have we been putting all of our eggs in the basket of programs? And if so, that's fine. Is there a group of people that are responsible for taking a look at all those programs, all those problems that we're constantly solving on a daily basis and saying, how can I help you to never solve that problem again? As a quick little side story, I remember I was calling some folks down in Alabama. We have some work going on. And I log on to this Zoom call, and immediately the face pops up of this person. She's not even looking up. She's like, hi, my name's Courtney. I'm your financial aid advisor. Please tell me what your FAFSA ID number is. And I was just like, oh my gosh, hey, it's me, Dakota. And she's like, oh, sorry, I've been solving this darn FAFSA problem over and over and over again. She told me she's had like 150 calls in the past week around the same FAFSA issue that she was trying to help students get through. And it's like that right there. If you know someone at your job, in your community, that has that like vibe going on right now, help them. just be like, hey, what's the problem that you're solving, and can we get a team of people immediately here to make sure you never solve that problem again? It's a really great way to figure out how to move systems along. All right, we're going to talk about data for a little bit, because this is the next kind of major shift that we want to see people make here. So I know it was commencement season. Commencement was here yesterday, but also it is a time for people to say, hey, we're getting into college. And you open up your red envelope and you're super pumped and you have this nice little enrollment checklist. Does anyone have a kid going off to college anytime soon? All right, cool. All right, some of you. All right, we'll be prepared. Right? So you have this nice little checklist and we're like, cool, all I have to do is follow these steps. What happens actually? What does this actually look like? Well, that's really what it looks like. And this is real. We went to a college in Texas who asked us to help them because they said we're not getting enough students that get accepted the first day of classes. So we did a secret shopper for them. I mean, look at this. There are lines that like loop back and around. You have to go to the registration. Maybe you make it to day one classes and you're in the wrong class. You have to go back up to advising center. It's a complete maze. The vice provost, her own kid couldn't navigate this at her own institution, right? So what happened? What happened to our nice, beautiful system? People happened. As soon as you put people into any system, it's going to change. Humans are chaotic things. We're nuts, right? So you have to kind of change the way you think about it. We have to change the way that we collect data. A lot of us are very reliant on secondary data alone. And there's a group called the Child Poverty Action Lab in Dallas, ran by this guy, Alan Cohen, that does this incredibly well. He noticed that he was kind of a bureaucrat who was making all these challenges, having all these challenges, making really good, smart decisions on behalf of children. And part of it is because he was really limited on the data that he had access to. So he left the school district and he created the Child Poverty Action Lab, and they have the goal of reducing childhood poverty in Dallas, which is pretty important because currently 1 out of 3 children in Dallas grow up in poverty. So they say, okay, let's really figure this out. So they make a bunch of big bets, and today I just want to talk briefly about the benefits delivery side of things. Because they looked at the thing and they said, gosh, only 40% of people who are eligible for WIC are actually using it. How do we actually increase more people using WIC? That's a $50 million we have sitting on our accounts every single day, every single year rather, that are underutilized. So, of course they did map eligibility clusters and say, hey, do we have WIC centers in the right place? And they made some moves here, but more importantly, they kind of joke, they have this radical idea for research where they just go and talk to people. And they're like, yeah, we have this radical idea that, really we can figure out if we just talk to folks. So they do. They go out and they talk to moms and families and they figure out, hey, what's your experience like using WIC? And they use some human-centered design processes. And out pops this. This is a kind of a roadmap of every single barrier that people were saying that they were facing when it comes to using WIC. Everything from, listen, the nutritionist offices are not fun to be in, to not knowing what is actually WIC eligible in the grocery store. I don't want to use this benefit because if I get something that's wrong, then I'm going to be embarrassed at the checkout line. And so what do? They start doing solve for ones. And they test out these little micropilots. In the clinics, they were really kind of dirty and gross, and you wouldn't want your kid kind of crawling around. And so they swept the floors and gave them like a $200 gift card to IKEA, put some pillows in. They took the nutritionist office, removed the desk, put in some small chairs. Visits to the clinics went through the roof. They went into the grocery stores and put these confusion cards up there. So now I know, as someone who's just shopping, what is and is not WIC eligible. They continue to do all these different things, just busting one barrier after another. And in a matter of a 1-year time, they reversed the trend on WIC utilization in Dallas. No new money, no new large grants. This is using the existing resources that they already had, close to $100,000 of additional WIC benefits spent in that 12-month period. The data that they shifted to was human data, right? We have to go out and collect qualitative information. A lot of us are very good with light cast information and good forecasting, and that's good. We have that spot for it, but it is very incomplete. We have to go and ask people what their experience is, because most systems are actually rather invisible to people. And so the communities that we know do this particularly well shift their data practice. They don't just rely on secondary data. They actually go out and collect primary qualitative information and kind of pair that back in through a lot of these tactics. Now I know I'm a little over time, so I'm going to wrap up here real quick. The last thing I want to just share with you, and I think sometimes it's the most profound way to start, which is why I'm ending with it, is a shift in expectations. And it's no wonder I'm going to kind of go back to Mr. Miller here for a moment. In 1964, Cummins had their own private golf course and golf club. And they just thought, well, that's silly. Why should we have a private golf course and golf club? And so Mr. Miller goes and he decides to dedicate it to the Columbus community. And this is his dedication speech. I am just going to read this briefly because I think it's pretty important. Why should an industrial company, organized for profit, think it a good and right thing to take $1 million and more of that profit and give it to this community in the form of this golf course and clubhouse? Why instead is Cummins, the largest taxpayer in the county, spend the same energy to try to get its taxes reduced, the cost of education cut, the cost of city government cut, less money spent on streets, utilities, and schools? The answer is that we would like to see this community come to be not the cheapest community in America, but the very best community of its size in the country. We would like to see it become a city in which the smartest, the ablest, the best young families anywhere would like to live. A community that's open to every single respective persons of every race, color, and opinion, that makes them feel welcome and at home here. A community which will offer their children the best education available anywhere. A community of strong, outspoken churches, of genuine cultural interests, exciting opportunities for recreation. A community whose citizens are themselves well paid and who will not tolerate poverty for others or slums in their midst. No such community can be built without citizens determined to make their community best, without city government which works boldly ahead of its problems and not always struggling to catch up, and without money sufficient to get the job done. So Cummins is not for cheap education or inadequate, poorly paid government or second-rate facilities or low taxes just for the sake of low taxes. Our concern is to help get the most for our dollar, to help build this community into the best in the nation. And we are happy to pay our share, whether in work or in taxes or in gifts like this one. And I've been using this a little bit more often lately because it just feels so foreign today. You know, we know there's issues around private equity. We know there are issues where, again, going back to that trust report, people don't really trust corporations much anymore. We kind of are at a spot in a lot of American communities where this sentiment, this idea that we're really in this together and that we all have a responsibility together as a community is slightly eroding. Excellence is a form of deviance. Excellence is a form of deviance. It is. Congratulations, you're all deviants if you want to pursue excellence. That could be a fun thing. Maybe a t-shirt slogan for you. And a community becomes excellent because it's willing to do things that normal places aren't willing to do. A lot of times you get asked the question, hey, who's doing this best? Who should we model from? I have really bad news. If you're doing excellent work, there is no one to model from because you're probably the only ones doing it. It's lonely at top, but you have to make sure that you're trying to do something, that you are willing to do something that normal places aren't willing to do. Because ultimately, there is nothing more expensive than mediocrity. There's nothing more expensive than mediocrity. If we have mediocre schools, if we have mediocre workforce systems, we're going to have, a talent pipeline and folks that aren't willing to fill the jobs, and then we're not going to be able to secure new businesses. If we have mediocre, streets and public parks and all these other things, we're going to be constantly paying for mediocrity in a community context. There's truly nothing more expensive than mediocrity. That is why when Columbus was described as average, they were pretty much not content on being average. We have to really pursue excellence in every form we can. And so what I want to leave you with is just this. As we go throughout today's agenda and hear from other folks and start to think about what is that we can do right here at home, I'll leave you with another Mr. Miller quote. Our way of working cannot be left to chance. The best response to the gifts we receive from previous generations is to create something of lasting value in our own time, in our own way, for future generations. And so I hope today that as we go through this conversation, and of course in your future, you're considering what is the gift that we want to give to our future generations. And I'm not just talking children, I'm also talking about the generation of employees that are going to be taking the roles of CEOs in the next 10 to 15 years. I'm talking about the next generation of economic development leaders, the next generation of elected leaders that maybe are in this room right now. Yes, of course, our children too. But sometimes we think about future generations and much closer now. What is the gift that we can make? And perhaps it's one of the shifts I've shared with you today. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Looking forward to the rest of the time today.
All right, we're going to get started again here shortly. We're just wrapping up a few technical things. As we continue our next speakers, I just wanted to take a second to thank Dakota for speaking. Civic Lab works with communities across the nation, like he was saying, and they focus on building rural community systems. Not all of their work has to do with manufacturing or with workforce development, but they really nail in on that systems type thinking. So as we go into these next speakers, we're going to talk about some of the programs and things that exist in our community. So I want to challenge you to kind of think forward on what systems can we implement, or what programs should we refine or improve or even add. Our next speaker today is going to be Molly Moses from Teams Neo. She's the interim manager of talent.
I'm actually with JobsOhio. Team Neo is a regional partner. We're going to talk about them in a minute, but with JobsOhio, I'm originally from Northeast Ohio. I'm from the Youngstown area. Currently living in Columbus, but I don't know if I've ever been to Tuscarawas County. I will likely ask you to talk back to me later on in this presentation. This is a great group, and I think we're kind of small enough to where we can call some things out. I can ask you some questions if that's okay. Just want to kind of understand more about who we have in the room. How many of you are educators in the education space? Okay. And then how many from industry, private corporations, company? Okay. Good bit of the rest. And then what are some of the leftover local economic development? Yeah. Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. We are going to get started. So, JobsOhio, simply put, what we do, we create jobs, we expand payroll, capital investment, and we retain jobs as well. So, our main role is to incentivize companies through our different programs to either come to Ohio, move to Ohio, and expand here, or retain the jobs in the industries that they already have. We are funded by the state's liquor enterprise, so we have a very unique model. If you enjoy spirituous beverages, so beer and wine does not count, but if you enjoy spirituous beverages, we have a long-term lease on the state's liquor enterprise, and that allows us to use the tax profits to create economic development. We have 10 priority sectors that you see there. They are based off of the in-demand jobs that are happening in those industries. Mentioned talking about Team Neo. This is where Tuscarawas County sits. We do have a representative, Kendra here, is from Team Neo. But JobsOhio operates with the help of these 7 regional partners. Lake to River there in the blue is our newest regional partner over in the Youngstown area. But these folks are our boots on the ground. The names that you see here are the talent representatives working directly with companies in their regions. Where are we now? There's a lot happening in Ohio. We are experiencing a ton of growth, which is a great thing. All these logos you see represented here represent the type of growth that is happening across these sectors. You see the investment in the billions. And here's the stat that we're going to talk more about today. 70% of the talent needed in this new job creation are either operators or technicians. Very technically skilled talent. Where are we going? So Ohio's doing great things, and JobsOhio has a 2030 strategy, so what we are executing on over the next 4 to 5 years. We want to be the #1 state in the Midwest for doing business, and at least number 5 in the U.S. So we are actively doing things that you see to make sure that those rankings improve. We pay very close attention to rankings like CNBC, best states for doing business, and things like that. So how we are doing that is attracting, developing, retaining talent. We are making sure that we have an innovative, agile economy to meet businesses where they are, to work at the speed of business. One of the things that is unique about JobsOhio and the fact that we are a private nonprofit and we, like other states, are not part of the Department of Development, it allows us to work more quickly and meet business needs more quickly. This is a busy slide, but it highlights what we are calling a few of our super sectors. Within those 10 priority sectors that I mentioned, there are 5 that are experiencing exponential growth, by the year 2030, and then pretty soon after that. So one of the ones that I will highlight in the center is life sciences and biotech or biohealth. That is our healthcare sector, but it is not traditional healthcare in the sense of doctors and nursing type of talent. Think research development and people that are developing drugs and testing them. Those are the type of companies that are coming to Ohio and expanding in Ohio. So across the state, not just in central Ohio, we are seeing a huge boom in the life sciences sector, as well as the other 5 that we are calling super sectors. To the type of talent, we're going to zone in on technicians today, but we've got a pretty big demand gap. That slide that had all of those wonderful logos for those employers, they need people, and they need skilled people. So the projected demand that you see by 2034 is massive. We all have work to do. It's not just an industry problem, it's not just an education problem, it's not just a family problem. Collectively, we need to help solve this gap. So 43% of that talent needed is in the technician roles. I think, and what we're going to talk about today, it seems like there is so much gray area around what a technician does. What does a technician do? Some of these other categories you see, most people can describe what an engineer is. A lot of people know what an operator is. We know what IT talent and coders do, but what really is a technician? So we'll zone in on that. JobsOhio has a portfolio of how we help to get this talent. I'm not going to go through each of these. Each of these programs are on our website, but it is a collaboration of initiatives and programs that are designed to attract talent, so import them here from other states. We have an amazing relocation incentive that is very easy for companies to use. We have the innovation districts that work with higher education institutions in the 3 Cs to make sure that we are rapidly producing more STEM talent through completions. And then we have efforts that are aimed at retention for companies as well. But all of these come together to kind of solidify what we call our build and our buy strategy for talent. All right, let's get into some of this data here. How many of you feel like you could comfortably describe what a technician is, what a technician does? A few of you? That's great. That's great. Some of you that have maybe worked in advanced manufacturing before, we had suspicions that with that large gap of technicians that we need, that 43% of that 525,000, who actually knows what a technician is. So we launched a research study, and we first started with how do we define a technician? Technicians are the ones who solve things. They answer the question, they get to the root of the problem, they make sure that equipment is functioning optimally and that it's reliable. They are problem solvers. They're able to read technical diagrams. So I know we think about STEM degrees and we understand that math and science are very important, and they are, but they also have to be problem solvers, have to be good working with their hands. This is where our research study started. How are we understanding what the perception is? So we talked to high school students, we talked to their parents, we talked to counselors, and then we talked to what we call the emerging workforce. So those are those that are, I call them kids, 18 to 25-year-olds, who are in the emerging workforce. And we talked to people currently working in these roles, current technicians and operators, to see what they are saying about the work that they are doing. So what we learned that there is high job satisfaction, really with technicians, they really enjoy their job. With operators who are actually the closest to being able to be upskilled into a technician role, there's a decent amount of job satisfaction, but not as much as if they were to become one of those technicians. What we found with emerging talent and with young talent, those students that we surveyed, they are more likely to pursue a technician career after seeing the salary. Shocking. Cash is king, right? So the earning potential is still somewhat secret. They don't understand that by going into these technically skilled pathways, they can earn a lot of money, and you don't have to be in school for a long time. So with understanding that operators, those currently working in those operator roles, are the closest to that upskilling pipeline, like the easiest pathway, only 33% of them plan to train to become a technician. So what does that mean? That means we have to do a better job internally, inside of our businesses, talking to operators about the benefits of becoming a technician. Production workers, assemblers, those are all folks that could easily transition into that pathway, but they don't know enough about it to be interested. Internal mobility does matter, we know that, but we need to look beyond what's happening with upskilling, beyond what's happening with those professional development plans. What does the next generation of the workforce want? Those videos that Chase showed at the top of our session today, they were great. Young talent has a different set of ideals. They want flexibility, they still want stability, they want to do work that matters. They are very much connected to purpose. So we have to meet the next generation where they are. When we asked the younger generations, what do you think, after we gave them that technician definition, what do you think about these roles? What do you think about working in advanced manufacturing? This is what they said. The large majority of them and their parents view these type of roles positively. There's not a negative sentiment that's happening. And most agree that it's a better job than people think. We went into this study not knowing. There was a lot of gray when it comes to who's influencing these students and the emerging workforce. We'll talk more about their influencers, but what do they actually think? And there's a positive perception even with parents. Parents are the strongest influencers, so it's important that parents will say, yes, I think that's a good path for my child to go into. So if we don't have a perception issue, we are no longer fighting those stereotypes that manufacturing is dark, dirty, and dangerous. That is not the stereotype. The emerging talent and the students understood that we're talking about advanced manufacturing. We are talking about clean rooms. We are talking about spaces that are great to work in. So we're not fighting stereotypes and the perception about advanced manufacturing being bad. So the real barriers are clarity. We talked a little bit about that, understanding what the jobs are, connection to the roles. How can I see myself here? What's my connection? Do I know anybody that's actually ever done this job? And exposure to the roles. Seeing a day in the life video or going to a manufacturing day experience. That exposure is vitally important. Another stat about the data, seeing the salary represented, and 95% of high school students increase their likelihood of being interested in these roles after reading a job description. Now, coming from a talent and workforce background, we do still have quite a bit of work to do with our job descriptions and how we talk about them. A lot of times they are almost 2 pages long. You need to be this, you need to know that. But if we are truly shifting to a skills-based hiring mindset, our job descriptions have to be simple enough for the talent to understand them. There we go. Exposure does work. So of those students that have been exposed to a manufacturing day, 73% of them found it influential. Those ones that have that exposure. Many of them don't get that opportunity, but they found that influential. And parents said that training experiences were very influential as well. If you can influence the parent, you can influence the child. So timing and influence is what we truly need to drill down on right now. Now this is a stat that when we talk about it, people are very surprised. 76% say they already know what they want to do for their career, but 42% of them decided before 9th grade. Is that shocking to you, educators? Yes? That is shocking. They are thinking about this much earlier. And then when we dig even further on the data, when we looked at what female students said and what students of color said, that stat goes up even higher because they feel less secure. They feel like they need to make decisions earlier. I need to have this figured out by the time I'm going into high school. So they don't feel like they have a lot of room for error to explore, which is, it's an us problem. We need to tell them that they don't have to have it all figured out, but we can certainly relate to them feeling that way. Who are the influencers of this generation? We went into this study wondering how much of social media really is impacting career decisions. They are on their phones all the time. I have a 12-year-old that will be 13 in July, and we limit his device time, but we wonder how much in terms of what he's going to do later, trying to push him into a STEM pathway, how much of what we say really matters. It is parents. Parents are the #1 influencer of career decisions. Students look really closely about what their parents say, but what they did for their jobs, neighbors, things like that. High school counselors are extremely important. We understand that across the state, some schools have more defined ways in which they go about career exploration, but high school counselors are very important as well. And friends. People you know. We talked to a lot of these students, and once they understood what it truly means to be in advanced manufacturing, they said, oh, I know somebody who works in some field like that. So these are the true influencers. Even though influencers are our strongest way to talk to students about careers, they are not necessarily equipped with the information to be able to talk about what they do effectively. In plain language, how can you tell a 7th grader what you do? And they also are not sure if they are going to recommend the path. And that is not because they are not satisfied, because the data told us that they were satisfied in that path. They don't know how to effectively manage that. They don't know how to be an advocate for the industry and make it very personal. Here are some things that we need to do moving forward or to stop doing moving forward. What we need to start doing. We've got to lead with technology. Values of the next generation are jobs that are highly technical. They want to work with advanced technology. Another data point that I didn't show talks about how a large majority of students right now identify some of their strongest skills as math and science, which was shocking to me. But that means that they really want to be connected to the latest advancements in technology. They want to know what is happening. They want to influence that. They want to work in those types of fields. So we need to lead with the fact that manufacturing is a technology job. That's what we have to start with. We have to engage parents and counselors. So industry, those of you that are here from industry, and we see sometimes how we can be a little siloed with industry and education. We've got to come together to fill the gap that I showed on those earlier slides. It is going to take industry talking to education and education talking back to industry on a constant loop. I love the saying that you said that you can't solve a dynamic problem with static data. Like that is amazing. We have to keep talking to each other about what is happening in real time, making that cross-collaborative connection to solve the problem. We have to talk about lifelong careers. So although times are different, students are not necessarily thinking about a career path in the way that our parents did. I'm going to get a job, I'm going to stay there for 30, 40 years, I'm going to retire, and that'll be it. They are not necessarily thinking about a career path in that regard. They do still value lifelong careers. One of the things that we also have to do a better job about messaging is transferable skills. So across those 10 sectors that JobsOhio focuses on, 9 of the 10 of those need technicians. So if you are skilled to be a technician in one of those super sectors, semiconductor or advanced manufacturing, you are likely also skilled to work as a technician or an operator in that biohealth super sector I talked about. So we're not doing a good job of talking about transferable skills and how you can get a 2-year associate degree, or even a 1-year certificate and become technically skilled, and then you can get a job with an employer that will upskill you even more. We're not talking about that really well, so we've got to make those connections about transferable skills. Another, it's really a fact, it's not really a hard statistic, but the data also told us that kids don't want to graduate with a lot of debt. They want short-term pathways. They want to be able to explore different things. So when they go into a 2-year pathway, they want to know all of the opportunities that will be afforded to them. Then they might consider carrying on with a further, more advanced degree, but they don't want to go into it signing up for 100 different things. So we've got to do a better job at explaining the benefits of those shorter career-term pathways. What we need to continue doing, but involve some industry partnerships. So I mentioned transferable skills and being able to have the opportunity to work in different industries if you are skilled in a few things, but industry collaboration is particularly important. We get a lot of requests from employers to work with higher education to create custom curriculum. We don't always need custom curriculum. There is curriculum that can be leveraged that will benefit all 5 of those super sectors if we just work together. It doesn't always have to be super customized. We need to expand our reach. Who are we talking to? These STEM and technical careers can't be just for the few. It can't be just for the students that are residing in the wealthiest districts of the state. We have to expand the access to these types of careers. We have to expand camps and STEM days and manufacturing days so they are available to talent and their parents all across the state. So it's our job to expand that reach. We have to strengthen pathways for women. The women and the female students in this study told us that they are interested in these careers, but the #1 barrier for them was not seeing themselves in these careers. When I see an ad, or when I see an employer, a digital ad that says, we're hiring for engineers, we're hiring for technicians, there's very few times that there's a woman represented in those roles. So they are interested, but they're not seeing themselves. We have to create more female-centered content. And what we need to stop doing, we don't need to defend manufacturing's image. They don't think it's dark, dirty, and dangerous. So we don't have to defend that perception that is no longer there. We can stop doing that. We don't have to lead with benefits. Employers, benefits are expected. They are a given. Talent, they are not looking at your career site and combing your website to see about your benefits. They want to see about inclusion. They want to see that they can see themselves working at your company. They want to know that they are going to have a sustainable career. So we don't have to lead with benefits. That's an expectation that's already there. And lastly, we can stop over-relying on social media. The social media influencers are not the ones that are influencing the next generation about careers. They're influencing them about a lot of things, but not a career pathway. So we don't have to focus so much on social media and campaigns being the answer. It is us having conversations, making it plain language for the students so that they can understand the career path ahead. That's it. Time is now. This is for all of us. This is a collective problem that's going to take collective problem solving. I think I've got like 2 or 3 minutes. Any questions, any feedback, anything that shocked you, I would love to hear.
I'd like to know where you got your data from, because some of the things seem very different than what we're seeing in Tuscarawas County.
Yeah, we did. So we worked along with Ohio Excels, who is the K-12 agency of the state, that we did a study that covered all counties. So those 400 and those the numbers that were on that slide were of students, parents, counselors, and emerging talent all across the state. It was a private study that we launched, along with Ohio Excels. But what are you seeing? I would love to hear what's different from what you're seeing.
Well, I would say that I agree with parents having roles. I would say that high school teachers have more influence than the counselors do. And I would say that kids still think that manufacturing is dirty here.
Really? Okay. That is valuable. I'm sure you are right. I think it depends on your level of exposure, what you're exposed to. If kids don't understand that advanced manufacturing is different than traditional manufacturing, I am absolutely sure that is the case. We do hear a fair amount about teachers being influencers. What we hear more often about teachers is that they feel so responsible for knowing about all of these pathways that they're not necessarily well versed to talk about a specific one to a student, so their knowledge base is more broad. And what we are telling educational institutions is that it can't be everyone's job. If there is someone, a career navigator, that is more able to drill down on this content to meet directly with employers, because when you go out to a factory or a fab, there's nothing like being there. There's nothing like being there and seeing it and then being able to talk about it. So I think that is more on the institution side. It's a charge to the counselors more so than the teachers or the career navigators. So the counselors are becoming more equipped, if that makes sense, is what we're hearing. Thank you. Right. I think that's my time. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful for you.
All right, while we get the presentation swapped over here, we're going to go ahead and go into our next two presenters. I want to welcome Scott Varian and Aleisha Stout from the Tuscarawas Workforce Development Board.
I'm also going to take a note and start marking the time because unfortunately we're going to talk about workforce development, and I could do that for quite a few days on end. So my name is Aleisha Stout. I am the Assistant Director at Tuscarawas Workforce Development Board. I know many of you. I saw how many hands were up for industry, which is very exciting. Today we want to talk a little bit about some local data. So we heard from Dakota some national practices, we went down to the state, and now we're going to go down to the local, which for us is Stark and Tuscarawas counties. So I first want to introduce what a local workforce board is. Can you raise your hand if you have heard of local workforce boards? Yay, that's a passing grade. So, workforce development boards, we want to position this really carefully because we are the entity that does a lot of what Dakota was talking about. Very systematically, we do not have direct programs that benefit job seekers or employers, but what we do have is networks, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. So for us, our customers are employers, job seekers, and the community. We bring all of them together to really start solving those joint problems. We have about 570 of us, of the local workforce boards across the country, and about 20 in Ohio. Some of the areas are very large. Multiple counties. We're very fortunate for our area to be a two-county area. What that allows us to do is know all of you very individually and understand what the problems are. Make sure we're going in the right direction. So for us, we have two buckets of work, really. We work in the left-hand side is probably what a lot of you associate with the workforce board. We oversee the local Ohio job centers where we serve employers, job seekers, the community, and we do a lot of different things there that I'm not really going to focus on today. But we also have the right-hand side, which is more of our strategic work. And this allows us to do some things with employers, with job seekers, with the community that is really tailored to our area.
So the left-hand side, that is across the country, for some continuity in the public workforce system. The right-hand side is really tailored to what does Stark County need? What does Tusk County need? What does our area need specifically? So that allows us to introduce a couple different strategic initiatives and projects that digs us down really into the data with the local leaders who make these decisions every single day. We're all on the same committees throughout the county. We see each other on a regular basis. And that allows us to get the ideas flowing, to get the processes in place, and really make some differences. So if you want to grab your phones, if you promise to pay attention to two things at once, if you want to scan the QR code, we have very local data that is both countywide and area-wide. So this is our Workforce Trends dashboard. Give you a second to scan there. At the top of that dashboard, you're going to find a filter. And you can filter by Stark County, Tusk County, and then the area combined. Depending on what kind of stakeholder you are, the data is going to be very relevant in one of those three buckets, if not more. So when we're looking at that, there's going to be a lot of different kinds of data, but the purpose of driving this was really because we see all of this national data. We see this Ohio data. Even when we get to the Team Neo footprint of the 16 counties, we see 16 county-wide data. Tusk County does not necessarily have the same or similar problems as Cleveland. And what we see is, with local data, it really gets skewed to those bigger C areas. And what we need is hyper-local, hyper-timely data to tell us what is going on in our county, what is going on in our area. And that's really what this dashboard is aiming to do. We newly implemented this about, I want to say less than a year ago. So every year we have the opportunity to change what kind of data do we need to see, what's driving the conversations in the community. So for now, for this first year, you're going to find data on population and available talent, just who's here, what are they doing, where do they live, where do they work. We're going to see some information on available jobs and employer needs. What's out there for posting? And we specifically look at that and do not take the help wanted signs in the windows and add that data in, because most likely that's not where job seekers are seeing. So we want to know what's posted, what's available out there for people to take advantage of. And then finally, we want to really look at the alignment in the talent gaps. I use this, and for those of you who know me, you probably heard this more than a couple times, but we look at this as an equation. So we look at the supply, we look at the demand, and then we want to look at the gaps and overlaps. That's pretty applicable in any process mapping, but that's really what we want to do with not only this initiative, but the initiative that Scott will talk about here momentarily. So we have a couple disclaimers and reminders before we talk about data specific to this area. These are just reminders for us as a group of friends. When we look at data, imperfect data-informed action will always beat waiting for perfect data. You can pick apart any source of data, any collection data, any outcome or insight of data to make it, one, say what you want it to say, and two, question it to the nth degree on if it's accurate. So, is our data accurate? Directionally, yes. Is it 1,000% accurate? No. But what we have is a directional sense of what Tusk needs, where we are, where we're headed, and where we've been. Next, identifying the root cause for problems is key. I don't know how many times we've been in a room where something's on fire, everybody gets together, hey, I found the simplest problem, solve. We just need to break the smoke alarm. No more sounds. We've solved the problem. We're good to go, high five. But really, at the end of the day, that doesn't really put out the fire. So we really need to dig down deep under what's going on to find those root causes. And then lastly, this is my favorite. That's why it's such a grainy image, because it's so old. Correlation is not causation. So we cannot assume that because we find data that reinforces something that we think, therefore that must be the cause of the problem, which we need to address. So just a couple reminders. If you're on the if you're on the website via your phone, you'll see some of these charts. This is the only chart that I'm going to show. I do encourage you to use the QR code, go explore. It is there all the time for anyone's use. But what we are looking at a couple different trends which I want to kind of work through, and these are all Tusk specific. So this is all Tuscarawas County only. Some of these will be very much in line with what you're thinking. Some might challenge what you perceive for the county. Hopefully it's a mix of both. So we have unemployment is down, but so is the labor force participation rate. So unemployment being down, great thing. Anybody who wants to work, very much so down. Unfortunately, the flip side of that, compared to Stark County, our neighbors in the north, and the United States as a whole, our labor force participation, those who are able and willing to be in the workforce, is down. And it's far lower and has been for quite some time. So that begs the question then, what do Tusk residents need to be ready for the workforce? I will entertain any conversation that does not include people just don't want to work. People do want to work. They want to root over that head. They want to go on vacation. They want to raise their kids. They want to put their kids in soccer. People do want to work. What is often the case is that they are not in a position in their minds to enter the workforce. So what can we do to change that circumstance, to look at that systematically? And then also to ponder, does the cost of making positions accessible and attractive outweigh the cost of recruitment and ongoing vacancies? For industry folks, there's a price tag to make those jobs accessible, to be a little bit more flexible, to offer this versus that. Is that investment worth the offset of recruiting and keeping vacancies and lost production? Next, employers face more job postings than immediately available qualified workers. We hear this all the time, there's more jobs than people. Not only that, there are more openings, or there are more individuals without certifications than what we need. We often hear from employers that that's a very big challenge because their hiring pool then shrinks. What we are wondering is the cost of certification training less than the cost of that recruitment and ongoing vacancies? Would it be time better spent? And these aren't suggestions, these are just pondering questions to consider. And these are questions that we in our strategic initiatives really dig down in those collaborative groups across industry, across private, across public. We work with schools, employers, intermediaries to really dig down and challenge ourselves to think about. More locals travel outside the county than non-residents travel inside the county. So net loss, essentially, for workers. Naturally, we have a very large portion of the population who live and work here. We have a small portion who live elsewhere and travel in for work. And then for that middle portion, I don't know how any of you are feeling, but if we could infuse magically 22,000 more workers in Tusk County, that would be a pretty big win pretty fast. And unfortunately, that's what's happening. They live here and they work elsewhere. So the question that I encourage you to ponder is, what can employers do to convince that large portion to work here where they live? I don't know anybody who wants a longer commute. So what could we do? What could we change as a community? Education and training output is aligned with demand. We heard this a little bit earlier with, I think his name was Mr. Miller, who went off and had, God forbid, a liberal arts degree from somewhere instead of engineering. But not that we want to change what the degree is completely, but I guess the question to ponder is what draws individuals to those liberal arts degrees that they can find in employment with our local employers. There's overlap. If they're looking for something in that degree, what can we pull out as a system to identify, hey, you like this about this area? You can find that at Great All. You can find that at XYZ local company. There's a heavy concentration of professions with salaries less than $40,000. So keep in mind, only 25% of the population, if you're up top of the dashboard, is under 19 years old. So $40,000 is not going to go really far if you have a full family and household to maintain. So keeping that in mind, that the other 75% are not in that young age group. I think it's 7 out of the 10 top professions are paying under $40,000. The easy answer is, hey employers, we need to up the ante, we need to up the salary. I'd like to challenge us all though to think something different. Is new equipment and upskilling an alternative to filling those 1,000 positions? How else can we get to not needing workers outside of just filling 1,000 positions? Again, very systematically kind of jumping the original assumption of what the answer is. And then also looking at, is it a retention issue by employer? Is it employer growth? That's a great problem to have. John would love to talk to you if you were having troubles because of growth. Is it evolving positions? Or did we have a lot of this position and now we have a lot of that position? What is happening with the employers? Those are questions that we would want to know. So now what? We have a lot of the data. We're getting more savvy and a better understanding of what's going on locally. What we really need to do now is figure out what now. So I'm going to introduce Scott Varian. He's our Workforce Solutions Manager. We agreed to this presentation very early. I think he's working on month 5 at the Workforce Board, but he'll do great. And I want to talk a little bit about, we get this question kind of a lot. What are you as a workforce board doing in this space? What does this have anything to do? You just get people jobs. Why are you doing this? So I want to be really clear. We, as the workforce board, were created to build the bridge, to really understand the workforce supply, the demand, the gaps and the overlaps. We can't do that if we're not really solid in the supply end of the equation, the demand end of the equation, and really tied to those gaps and overlaps in terms of solutions. So, a couple of different reminders as we invite our newer employee Scott up to talk. You've heard it from the both presentations, and I promise we didn't coordinate, but we are all in the same boat. It is your concern. So if there's anything in any of these presentations you've heard that you've thought, oh, that's not super relevant for me, I have bad news for you. Because everything you've heard so far is relevant to this whole room and so many more. And if one of us fail, we are all going down. So John would love to see more retention, more expansion projects. He'd love to see, as his organization, more companies coming in. The Economic Development Board is not going to, though, only be worried about those things. They're worried about education. They're worried about workforce. And we know that because we talk to them often. We know education is very concerned with how many new businesses are coming in, and what does industry look like, and what are you doing next year for your company party that employees are going to like. It's all very much connected. And the last reminder I'll give before I let Scott talk a little bit about the Business Resource Network. We can share challenges, we can share a vision, we can share goals. We can all want the same thing for Tuscarawas County. We can all want the same thing for economic development. But without shared action, we're just left with aspiration. So you'll find in the Business Resource Network, we ask a lot of partners. It's a collection of partners across the industries, across the counties. And at first it's going to sound like, oh my gosh, why are they buying into that? Why are they in that group? Why are they spending time? Without the action, we're all going to have the same problems. And you'll find that we are actually doing one of the things that Dakota mentioned. We're using people, we're using data, and we're also trying to figure out how do we make this problem no longer exist, which is a tough conversation to have and doesn't get solved in one meeting. So with that, I'd love to introduce Scott, but first, before I do, let's keep in mind the last reminder. The moral of antidote is not data. Just because you've heard it twice doesn't make it automatically 100% the case. So the reason we say that, we are newly collecting different kinds of data always collected a lot of data. Recently, we've relaunched a Business Resource Network 2.0, and we're asking for different data. The reason being, we have lots of anecdotes in Tusc County. Lots of people talk, lots of people know each other. We don't necessarily have the data to suggest the right problems or the correct solutions. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott. He's going to talk a little bit about our Business Resource Network, what that is, what that looks like, and I really implore you to make the connections on how that's relevant to you.
Thank you, Aleisha. Good morning, everyone. All right, so like Aleisha said, I'm new in this role, so I have a lot of notes because I'm trying to keep track of what I was trying to say. So again, like Aleisha said, the Business Resource Network is a network of business serving partners that are looking to identify problems and issues that businesses have and to try to fill those gaps. So I'm going to speak today a little bit about what we do, who makes up the BRN, kind of the goals, the problems that we're trying to solve, and then speak to some of the programs and services. There is a lot out there. There's programs at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. I tried to pull out some that are specifically Tusc. Since we are starting at Tusc, we look at both counties. Some are specific to each county, but some overlap into other regions. So, like Aleisha said, this is not a new initiative. The BRN has been in existence since 2008. Before, there was a lot of analytical or anecdotal data that was coming through, and so we're trying to focus more on specific data from the partners, from the folks that we talk to better inform decisions. So that's that 2.0 version is trying to go from anecdotal to actual real-time data. All right, so who makes up the BRN? We have employer pursuing partners, so that's your economic development folks that go out and visit businesses, your chambers, other partnerships like Team Tuscarawas. Those are the folks that are talking to businesses to try to understand what problems they have. We have the programs and services partners that have workforce solutions for business issues. That's your schools, your SBDC, your Ohio Department Job and Family Services, Port Authority, other organizations that look to help with workforce issues. We have workforce adjacent partners that are trying to improve your business, if it's consulting or new markets or help with funding, that they indirectly impact workforce by developing stronger companies, that they need more people or can upskill their people to drive that workforce development. And then other stakeholders are folks that work around businesses and have a vested interest in the economy to grow and to be stable. All right, so some of the problems we're trying to address as a network. First, we're trying to look for talent today to be successful and growing. So are you filling current roles, and are you filling roles that you need for the future if you're trying to expand? Pipeline for tomorrow's talent needs. So is there a pipeline for future employment? So I have what I have, sometimes we hear, oh, I have what I need now. I have the people I need to do what I need to do now. Okay, so what does it look like in the future? What happens if a few of those people leave that go to retire or leave for another organization or another business? Do you have a pipeline to bring the next, the bench up into another role? Upskilling talent and maximize productivity and retention. So who do I currently have? Can I train them to become better leaders, or train a line worker to become a leader, or a leader that's already in a position to become even a better leader? So how do we upskill that talent to increase productivity, but also increase that retention for them to stay with your company? We also want to identify employers' needs with compatible solutions. So are the gaps being filled with programs? So if there's a gap there that we're seeing that doesn't have a program that really is addressing that, then what do we need to do to help develop that? And then infrastructure to validate employer needs and effective solutions. So again, using the data to drive future needs and solutions for businesses and to identify gaps and fill those gaps. All right. Okay, so there's the Business Resource Network has partners that look into different aspects of your business. Workforce is what we like to try to focus on, but it has an impact on workforce with other problems that can be solved. So we have funding, new business and market development, innovation, regulatory, strategic. But what we find through our early data that we've got from the partners in the network is about 51% of employer needs fall into that workforce category. So we actually have created 6 key categories of workforce to kind of delve out to know which programs are part of each of these categories. So I'm going to go over the categories. I'm going to highlight just one program from each of these, but there are multiple programs and services that can be used for businesses over a variety of industries, over a variety of sizes of industry. They could be free programs, they could be for a cost. But if you want to learn more information about that, we have those network partners that can give you more information about what those organizations do. So the first one I have highlighted here is kind of have this employment value proposition. So that's that kind of retention part. How do we attract and retain talent to our company? So the U.S. Navy Talent Pipeline Program was developed by the Navy, the U.S. Navy. It is a retention and training program developed to dive into your recruiting and your training programs. They really focus on hire for fit and then train for skill. So you're looking to really revamp the recruiting process that you have. It is a free service. It is funded by the Navy. And you don't have to be contracted in government contracting to be part of this program, but you do have to be kind of in the maritime supplies pipeline, but a lot of organizations might be in that pipeline, they just don't know. Or a lot of companies might be in that pipeline. So if you reach out, then they can tell you if you're in that pipeline. The next is internships, high school and college. I highlighted Magnet here. There's a program through the Ohio Department of Development. It's called the Ohio MEP High School Internship Program. They partner with regional partners to identify students that want to be part of manufacturing. So the regional partner is Magnet. I'm sure some of you know who Magnet is. But this is an organization dedicated to grow manufacturing industry through consulting, new ventures, executive education, and other talent development. They have free services. They have some other services at a higher cost in terms of like executive leadership training. But this program specifically reimburses 50% of wages for an internship program at a max of $1,500 per intern. So it's a nice way to promote internships through your company. So new hires, the general workforce. I've highlighted Ohio Needs Jobs here. We have both the Start and Tusk facilities. While most people see Ohio Needs Jobs as kind of just job posting, they do have other services for employers. Resume matching, job fairs. You can do job fairs in office or application at your company. They have labor market information. And then the Incumbent Worker Training Program is a reimbursement of 50% of training costs up to $25,000 for whoever you're training for the year. So it's a great way to get some money back. We do have a lot of money in that program still. And that is, again, free services from the Ohio Needs Jobs as part of taxpayer dollars going to Ohio Needs Jobs. So that is a great resource. And I do have some, I have a contact Renee at the end of the presentation. I do have some cards and brochures for you if you'd like to see me after. so new hire specialized population. At the Department of Job and Family Services, there is the Work Opportunity Training or Tax Credit Program. It is a tax program that reimburses or gives you tax credits of $1,200 to $9,600 for hiring individuals in specific targeted groups facing employment barriers. That is a great way to, if you're bringing in folks for those that fall into that category, it's a great way to be reimbursed for tax credit. There is a couple other organizations that I didn't highlight here, but the Department of Veteran Services and the Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. So if you're interested in expanding your potential workforce to different pipelines, those are great organizations to kind of tie into and see what they have to offer for looking at those specialized populations. All right, students, K through 12 engagement. We talked a little bit about that, about some of your educators trying to encourage students to kind of fall into those manufacturing degrees. I'm highlighting here Buckeye Career Center. It's a career technical school in Tusk. I think a lot of you know. Steve's here, I think Frank's here. But they have career programs ranging from welding, masonry, cosmetology, medical assisting. They will help you engage with high schoolers in high demand careers and help with job postings also to try to hire some of those kids after they're through their senior year. All right. And then lastly, upskill current employees. Bill's here, I see. And so at Tusk, or at Kent State University of Tusk, this is about upskilling your leadership with Leadership Tuscarawas. It's a 10-month program that meets every month. It focuses on fostering leadership skills and development, addresses problem solving, conflict management, community awareness, healthcare, education, and economic development. There is an application, small fee, but you're making a commitment to your team to develop passionate, visionary, community-focused leaders in your company. So it's a great program to upskill your talent, to make them hire better leaders in this specific community. All right, so what's next? So the Business Resource Network is designed to give you the resources and services that fit your needs as a company. There's some partners here in the audience today, part of that Business Resource Network. We know that you don't have the time, the capacity, the bandwidth to research all these organizations, understand where all this falls into what you are trying to accomplish as a company. So we are the resource for that as part of the workforce pool. So if you're looking to learn more information about this, John's part of the network and has access to a lot of these companies or these organizations to give you more information that fits your company. But also Renee, that I'll put her contact information up here for having these jobs. She's a great resource to kind of get you connected. But just because, first part is getting connected. If you might get connected to the wrong person in the network, we will help you guide you to where you need to be for whatever fits your need as a company. And so, so I think what we're trying to do is develop a better network, trying to improve on filling those gaps, understanding what the workforce supply is, what the employer demand is, and making sure that we fill in those gaps of what services and programs can help to impact businesses and grow. So here's the contact information. If you're an employer that is looking for workforce needs, you can contact Renee at the Highlands Jobs. Information is there. And then if you're a service provider and looking to learn more about the BRN or be a partner in the network, you can contact me. So I'll leave that up there for a second if you'd like to take a picture. All right, thank you.
So I'm going to ask these four to come on up. I will have them introduce themselves here in just a moment. The reason that I picked each one of these is because they each have done something within the workforce space really well. So I have a couple of targeted questions for them so they can tell you a little bit more about that, and then I'll open up to the floor for questions.
Morning, my name is Katie Johnson. I am the Senior Talent Acquisition Leader at Allied Machine and Engineering.
I'm Oriana Terquios, a manufacturing engineer at Varian Industries.
Good morning, my name is Michelle Campbell. I work at R&J Cylinder Machine. I'm their controller.
And Mike Walber, CEO, Tuscarawas MFG.
All right, so our first question today is actually for Mike. So I want to ask you, can you describe how your flexible scheduling has allowed you to tap a new talent pool compared to a rigid adherence to pre-designated shifts?
So I preach to my fellow manufacturers often that can be a little stuck in the past where all we had to do was say, even whisper in the neighborhood, we're thinking about hiring people. People would line up at the door to fill out applications, and I want to come work here. Not so much the case anymore. And we have the ability, through the digitization of all forms of employment, that we can track people, we can accommodate people better today than ever before. So in our case, we have team members who are able to start, for instance, at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. And work a schedule. We also offer part-time employment for people who can't work a full 40 hours or better schedule. And we have found that many times we're able to attract people who have never even considered manufacturing as a career because they said, I can't work 40 hours, I can't be there at 5 a.m., I can't be, and we're like, no, let's figure out a way, and we've been very successful with that.
Thank you. Our next question is going to be for Michelle. Tell us about R&J Cylinder's partnership with Buckeye Career Center to create customized training.
It's a lot easier than you think. About 2 years ago, I was exploring different avenues for upskilling our workforce. We had tapped into the on-the-job training and then the Ohio Income at Workforce training. And at the same time, I was in Frank Pullman's office and I was complaining to him about, something that I was unhappy about. And he looked directly at me and said, "Who do you have?" So I went back to my team and we kind of vetted the whole process. And I started, you need 4 things. You need a partnership from Buckeye. The process for getting a licensed instructor was 5 years experience and a background check. So we checked that box, went back to our team. We took our current training plan and the entire matrix, and then the management team kind of looked at what we thought we were going to be able to do. We went out to the Ohio Tech Credit Program, looked at all the different credentials. We picked a dozen or more. And then we also included our employees. We sent out surveys. What do you want? What are we missing? What do we need to do for you? And we kind of pulled everything together, and we have a licensed instructor who works for Buckeye, who is employed by us during the day. And in the evening, we outline, I think it's about 5 hours a week, we have instruction provided by Buckeye to our employees at our facility, and they get credentials at the end of the 6 to 8 week program. We have about 6 sessions a year. We have a kind of like an annual outline of what everybody wants to be trained on. They get their credentials, and then eventually we get reimbursed for it. It really is an amazing partnership, and we would not be able to do it without Buckeye.
Thank you. Okay, Ariana, you went to school here at Kent, and you both interned and worked at Great Hall, which is maybe a 5-minute drive from here. So can you tell me about any advantages or disadvantages there are to having attended a college so local to your current job?
Yes, going to Kent State Tusk was definitely beneficial. I grew up with a lot of programs like Project Lead the Way and Manufacturing Camp that kind of vetted me towards Kent State Tusk. But it definitely helped open up a world of opportunities just in your local counties. I didn't even know some of the stuff that was offered in the county, but through these programs and through Kent Tusk, you got to see it. We had a lot of local manufacturers, especially in engineering. They'd come in and want to talk to us, or they'd post a lot of internships or possible careers that they offer. So it was nice you got to see a lot more that was local. You didn't have to start looking out of your county or out of your city or even out of state like some people kind of think they do. I think that's a general idea in this county for kids. They think that we do not offer a lot, and we actually do. We just aren't exposed to it, and luckily we started exposing the youth around my time to start showing people there is opportunities here and there's a lot more than they know. So another big part of being in a local college was we also had some professors that were actual engineers in the county or in companies around here. So then you literally got to talk to them and see what they did every day. And you got to kind of start piecing together where you wanted to go, what you wanted to go into. I was lucky with Grade All. They offered an internship and was willing to even work with my schedule of schooling. So they let me take off Wednesdays so that I can catch up. I was taking a full course load, so they let me catch up on my work on Wednesdays so I can continue working. So, I mean, they're very flexible, and they're actually interested in you being here and actually getting your degree and coming to work for them.
Okay, now Katie, can you tell us a little bit about how Allied Machine uses interns to supplement their workforce, pros, cons, and maybe the rationale behind it?
I would say just now we are going to come here this Monday and start a lot of our interns. And the way we utilize them, I would say, as many of you know and may do the same, is any work and project that we want to do but can't get to, we certainly try to utilize them for that, right? We don't have the bandwidth right now, we don't have the capacity, so let's assign that to our intern and see if they can both get challenging work but also solve some problems for us. I think that was kind of the theme of the day, is right, solving a problem, and that's what we're looking to our interns for. I don't know if I can think of any cons for an intern or an internship. I think usually it's more pros for everybody involved, right? The intern gets the experience that they're hopefully looking for. They can really reassure themselves that the education that they're getting is truly the work that they want to do when they do graduate, and that all of our hiring managers get work checked off and maybe build a great relationship with the interns that are there.
All right, we're going to come back over to Mike now. The second question I have for you is, what has Tusco done to accommodate working parents who struggle to balance work and childcare?
Yeah, we haven't mentioned childcare. I know a few people in here are aware. It's a big challenge. We have a childcare desert in Tuscarawas County. And thank you all for nodding. Yeah, it's really true. If you don't have a grandparent nearby or an aunt or whatever, oh boy, how do you handle it? So a couple of things we've done. Flexible scheduling is part of it, allowing people to work on a part-time basis to meet the needs of their family is a part of it as well. We're just implementing June 1st a new family care benefit as well, which will provide $150 a month per child or beneficiary. I shouldn't say that because it could be also used for elder care. It's not covering costs. It's meant to cover costs that aren't covered in other ways. It's not unusual for a young parent in our community to be spending thousands of dollars every month potentially to have their children cared for. So much so that they say, I can't work. It doesn't pay for me to work. It'll cost me more to go to work. I'm going to stay home. And we're trying to help be more, you're welcome, Jane. We're trying to help people at the margin be able to say, hey, I can do it. I can do this. I can make it work.
Okay, so sometimes it can be really easy to recognize an issue, but it's not always easy to find a solution. So Michelle, I want to ask, what advice would you give to a company that has identified a skills gap in their workforce, but they aren't sure how to go about designing training to meet that need?
Don't be afraid to take the first step. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to change. Our processes, we know, and we feel like it's not, I mean, it's just not going to be perfect. So we just kind of took the first few steps. We did about 4 sessions, and we meet once a quarter to figure out what we need to change for the next session, and be resourceful. The people in this room, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no dumb question. And you just got to do it. And I don't know.
Thank you. All right, Ariana, what has Great All done well when it comes to transitioning you from an intern to a full-time employee?
Great All was really good at actually not treating me as much as an intern. So when I first went to interview with Great All, they asked me what I wanted to do every day. Not just what I want to do in a career, but every day. Like, what do I want to wake up, go to work, and go home? What do I want to complete? And I said that I wanted to design, but I didn't want to just sit at a desk. I wanted to go out and actually be on the floor, talk to people, watch my actual designs be built, and actually help with it. And they said, okay, good, that fits. So I ended up joining Great All in their manufacturing engineering department, but I specialized with my one Ontario Lonzo Parrish. He does all the tool design for Great All. So I figured out really quick that tool design was very close to what I wanted to do every day. So, but they really didn't treat me as an intern. They treated me as an engineer. I worked close with them. I worked on the same projects as Alonzo, so that I actually got to do real design work, not just intern stuff. I mean, it was real, it's still used today. And then by the time when I got my degree in December, I just basically got an official title and a much better paycheck with benefits, which was definitely the greatest transition. And I made my workload, everything didn't really change, just my title and my paycheck. So they did really well with just training me and seeing how I fit in their role and if I even wanted to be in that role.
All right, so I think we've seen the value that comes from interns, but so Katie, I want to ask you, how do you go about recruiting interns, and what qualities do you look for when you're interviewing them?
Sure, I think that's a great segue. I would say that no different to what you want to see in a student, a coworker, is exactly what you want to see in an intern, right? There are table stakes. We obviously want good attendance, and everybody that tours our facilities, whether that be the middle school or the high school students that come, everything is a parallel from the good attendance that you see in class. We want to obviously see that at our place of employment as well. And you just want somebody that is going to put in the work, right? Do exactly what you ask of them and go above and beyond. Everybody here can picture somebody that has done that for them, and that's exactly what you want to see. I think somebody had mentioned it here, and I loved it, that you want to just hire for fit, but then the skills will come. You can teach the skill, and I love that, because I truly believe if you were to think about the individual in your life that is a hard worker, that you will take them all day long and you will teach them whatever you need to do. So many times I think our hiring managers get so caught up that we need this, this, and this. But at the end of the day, if you can find somebody that is going to do the work and put in the work and have a great attitude, you will train them. And in my opinion, I think that that would go a long way. And I think, and hopefully that is helpful in answering more specifically about it, because I went on a tangent there, but I would say that so many of our interns know someone, not just a guy, but maybe a woman as well, knows someone. So many times, the individuals that we hire for our internships, they are majority of returning interns, right? So we've had them and they've done a great job, so we want to bring them back. But also, I would tell you at Allied, we have made roles and made spaces for individuals that know somebody. So if you get the opportunity, which so many here are fortunate to do, not just in this room, but at Buckeye Career Center when we had Project Lead the Way showcase last week. Steve Stokke, as you know, one of the executive vice presidents and family owned at Allied, is a huge proponent of Project Lead the Way, is also a host there. You get the opportunity all the way from elementary to the high school when you are completing that showcase and you're presenting, Steve will try his best to get around to all those projects. Not only is he judging you on your project, he is also saying, could this be a good candidate for an internship with Allied? So I would highly recommend anybody in this room that touches any of those students to let them know that it's more than just being at the showcase and presenting your project. It's an opportunity to get to know somebody that will absolutely have a hand in getting you the internship that you want or the career that you want. So definitely network. I utilize LinkedIn. I imagine a lot of people here do as well. And I would tell you that go on LinkedIn, even as a full-time individual here, if you're looking for a career, not just an internship and a student, go there. You can likely see the entire org chart of an organization from the CEO to the HR person that is in charge of talent acquisition. Get scrappy and be persistent and look at that talent acquisition person, message them, call Allied Machine and Engineering, go down the directory and try to get a hold of whoever you need to get the internship that you want. So I could go on and there are many other things I could share. Those are a lot of what I would. But again, if you guys want to talk afterwards, I'd be happy to do that to try to help any of our interns here in the county.
All right, thank you. I want to take a few minutes here to open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions for these four?
I got a big enough mouth. Do all of your companies provide funding for accelerated training? And if that is accelerated training, does they have to be in your business to get that training? Meaning it's going to further them to move up the ladder in your business, or could it be for someplace else that they would go that they would need that training? I'm looking at associate or program like that.
We have forever encouraged and paid for educations up to and including a bachelor's degree. I did a couple master's degrees early on, and those people left right after they finished those degrees. So we didn't do that anymore. But one of the things we tell our associates on the day they arrive, we're hiring you to do a job today, but we start training you for your next job today as well. And at some point, that job might be somewhere else. So we're not so pig-headed to think somebody's going to come and live at our place forever. So we want to be continually training. It could be industry-recognized credentials. It could be associate and bachelor's degrees. I'm proud to say we have 2 full-time associates who just finished their bachelor's degrees in engineering here at Camp Tusk yesterday. So very excited about that. But it doesn't have to be at that level all the way along. We're all about continually investing in our people because it's the people that get the job done. Sean?
Something that keeps popping into my mind is early in my career, I remember having a conversation with a business owner, and I said, well, where do we spend all this money? But he looked at me and said, well, what if you don't and they stay? I mean, you have to be willing to put in the checkbook, open your checkbook to fund whatever you need funded. Again, be resourceful, because there's plenty of money out there to reimburse you if you're willing to put the time in. And I don't know, I could go on and on about the training, and you have to, the other thing I would say is, as a company, if you want to do training, you want to provide training, you really need to involve your employees, the ones who are working every day on the floor. And we can sit and talk about what we think our training needs to look like, but it's going to get a lot more traction if you include the employees on the floor.
Okay, got time for at least 1 or 2 more questions?
Mine is for Michelle again. So you were talking about working with Career Center. Did you develop your own curriculum? Did you work with the Career Center on curriculum? How did you guys work together on that? Because that specifically, there's other
So when we licensed the instructor, he was given full access to all of the, is it Buckeye Education Public Credentials, or the training programs. So we have that available to us. However, we do not utilize that. Being a machine shop, like all of our jobs are completely, every time they turn on a machine, like everything about each job is completely different. So we knew what we needed to do to have our employees be able to reset every time. I don't know if that makes sense, but we had a training matrix. We just needed to keep the, I guess being, like my role is being the facilitator within our company is you get on the floor, you get complacent, you say, okay, we're gonna do this, and it lasts for a couple months and then it just kind of goes away. I'm very persistent and I follow up and follow through and I'm scheduling meetings and I'm insisting that people come and talk about what the progress they've made and then requesting the assessments that they've done at the end of each 8-week session. So we really tailored it specifically to our equipment, our needs, and our current workforce.
Anyone else? Time for at least one more.
Jason,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to ask a question. But I wanted to share something. I work with a small cohort of high school sophomores every year at Indian Valley. And at the beginning of the year, I always ask them, what do you think on a scale of 0 to 10, 0, no way in the world, 10, absolutely will, what do you think the odds are you're going to want to have a career and work for a company here in Tuscarawas County? This year's fairly typical. It was a 2. That these are kids who say, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be here. And I think one of our challenges as educators and as employers is to open their eyes to the possibilities. And so part of what we do, and it's only a part, but we do tours of facilities, of manufacturing plants, recognizing that not everybody's going to want to be in manufacturing or a technician's job or an operator, but there are all sorts of jobs, legal jobs, human resource jobs, all the rest in those companies. And at the conclusion this year, the median score, when I asked the same question, was a 7. It's about exposure. It's about letting them know what's here. We have world-class manufacturers, right here. We have world-class companies. We have a world-class, we have a community, we have a county, more than 1 million people a year come here to vacation, to check us out, learn about the Amish, whatever the case may be. This is a place people come for fun. Gosh, you could even live here, and people who live here, kids a lot of times that just don't know, and it's our job to help them.
Thank you, Mike. And again, I want to say thank you, and we get a round of. Move on to a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a comment to make based on what Mike Robert just said. There's an organization in the community called #LiveTusk, headed by Diane Lautenschlager with the CVB and Jason Ricker with Kimball Companies. And the focus of their program is to identify the quality of life aspects for people who might want to live and work in this community. You can see it on Facebook. It's a very significant initiative. So if you're looking for another way to recruit people in, that's one option. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, we are running out of time, so before I wrap this up, I just want to give a quick thank you and round of applause to our speakers. Okay, so that does conclude today's summit. If you don't mind, I would appreciate you taking a moment to scan this. There's a quick Google survey that I'm asking you to give a little bit of feedback. This is our first time doing this. The inaugural first year, we want to continue to do this, so we want to continue to improve. We cast a pretty wide net as far as people to invite today, so please let me know what you think, what was useful, what wasn't useful, and give any recommendations for next year. My contact information is up on the screen if you need it. I also have a few cards today, so please feel free to reach out to me. I can contact you with anyone that spoke today or get you involved with Team Tuscarawas, which brings me on to my next thing, a shameless plug. Some events that we do have coming up are, we do bi-monthly meetings. Next Friday, May 15th, is Team Tuscarawas' next meeting. Pretty excited for that. And then we've got some pretty fun stuff going on this summer. We are currently doing a career shadow program. A lot of the people in this room are involved with that. I went to a bunch of businesses and I asked them to create an outline for a 30 to 35 hour shadow experience at their company. And I gave those descriptions to the schools in the community and asked them to select students. And these students are going to get to go get an intro into these companies, spend about a week with them, and at the end we're going to use some of our grant funds to pay that student a $500 stipend. So they get a paid learning experience, and the companies get to build a relationship with our schools. So we're in the swing of that right now. And I cannot find the words to say how much I recommend you encourage students in your schools, for our education partners out there, to participate in manufacturing camp. That's coming up this July. It's a great program. It's run through Buckeye Career Center, but it's led by our industry, our local manufacturers. The students get to go and they spend a few days learning, getting lessons from our local manufacturers and getting to tour facilities. You heard today from Ariana, who she went to manufacturing camp, fell in love with the company, and now today she's here as a panelist. So thank you all for your time. I appreciate you coming.